When I look back at November 2023 and where we are today, I am just in awe of what happened in the last year. Because November 2023 is when I decided I was going to take the plunge and start a podcast. I put months of work before I launched it January 10th of this year. And it has blown me away. You have blown me away. I had no idea if it would resonate with you. I didn't know if people would enjoy the French accent because it's just audio and no visual. And, my hubby, Craig, and I discussed this, and he was so worried I would overstretch myself because, that's a weekly show on top of creating YouTube videos, daily posts on social media, blog post, weekly email full of value. And by the way, if you haven't jumped on my email yet, what are you waiting for? I'll have the link below in the show notes so you can join my TCM community and not miss out on all the value I send through my emails. Last week, my husband said, "I'm so proud of you." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because I didn't think the podcast would resonate so much with your community." And he's right. The podcast has reached so many people who are benefiting from it. We have actually reached, in the first year since January 10th, over 65,000 downloads in our very first year. And that's not counting the YouTube views. A lot of people listen to the podcast on my YouTube channel instead of Apple or Spotify or anywhere where you listen to podcasts. So I am blown away by this. My husband and I every year choose a word that we are going to embody for that year. And in 2024, I chose growth. And I have to tell you, 50 episode into this podcast, after a few months of the podcast, I realized I needed a better microphone because mine wasn't good enough. I learned so much from you, from the guests, from everyone's feedback. It has been an amazing journey. So welcome to a special episode of the AcuPro Show. As we approach the end of 2024, I can't believe it, time just flies. I'm excited to present the compilation of the most downloaded solo episodes from this past year, because I obviously do solos and guest podcasts to kind of mix it up because I like that. It's kind of hard to believe that less than 12 months ago, I started this podcast journey. And I want to first take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude for you, for being here every week, for listening, for giving me your feedback. First and foremost, thank you for being part of this incredible TCM community. Your support, your feedback, your enthusiasm has made every episode worth it. I've loved sharing my insights, stories, and knowledge with you, and I hope you found value with each episode. I receive so many DMs on social media and email letting me know weekly how many people truly love and benefit from the show. I wanted to read you a Apple podcast review that Mariam has left for me. I always enjoy Clara's podcast while I'm out for my walks. She has a wonderful energy that makes you want to listen to her. She teaches in a dynamic way, is organized and clear, and makes the material easy to grasp. So this podcast is especially suitable for students and new practitioners. Thanks, Clara, for your contribution to our profession. Oh, that made my day. Thank you so much. And this is why I continue to provide so much free content and value on all my social media, YouTube channel, podcast, blog posts, everywhere. So in this best of solo episodes compilation, you'll hear some of the highlights from my solo recordings. And by the way, the link to the full episode of each of the one I share today will be in the show notes below. So you can go and listen to the entire episode if you haven't yet. Next week, I will have the best of guests. Ooh, this is a good one too. These episodes reflect not only my passion for acupuncture, but also my commitment to empower you with practical tools and insights for your practice, whether you're a seasoned practitioner or a TCM student. As I'm looking ahead at 2025, I'm eager to continue exploring new topics, inviting inspiring guests, and deepening our conversations. Your feedback and support drives me to keep creating content that resonates with you. I'm here for you. So sit back, relax, or clean your house, work out, go for a walk, whatever you do when you listen to the podcast, and enjoy this curated selection of solo episodes that have shaped the AcuPro Show in its first year on the air. Thank you so much once again for your support. I can't wait to see what next year brings. Let's go. Welcome to AcuPro, a show dedicated to making Chinese medicine and acupuncture easy to grasp and fun to learn. Hi, I'm your host, Clara Cohen. I support practitioners and students like you in changing the world one patient at a time. My goal is to share my passion for TCM and empower you to achieve superior patient care. I love to showcase the amazing benefits of acupuncture because, after all, acupuncture rocks. Let's start with episode number 40, a step-by-step guide to differentiating 10 common symptoms in TCM diagnosis. The little snippet you're going to hear is all about how to differentiate pain according to Chinese medicine. Obviously, some people come to see you because they're in pain, but in general, we're going to ask, do you have any pain anywhere in the body? And people might answer with headaches, knee pain, back pain, wherever the pain is. First, we have to look at the quality of the pain. If it is constant, meaning it's always there, versus it comes and goes. If it's constant, it's blood stasis. If it comes and goes, it's a liver qi stagnation. If it moves, it's a liver qi stagnation. If it's fixed in the same area, it's a blood stasis. Let me give you some example. Dysmenorrhea, the pain is in the lower abdominal, it's fixed, it's stabbing, it's strong, and it's constant during the menstruation. That is blood stasis. Liver qi stagnation pain would be come and go. So the pain that comes and goes could be arthritis. And the person can say, yeah, sometimes it's my wrist, sometimes it's my knees. So it changes location. It's not always in the same spot. It moves and it's not constant. That's a liver qi stagnation. Now that pain that's arthritic, maybe it's worse when there is cold weather, or when there's hot weather, or when there's damp weather. Now that means there's liver qi stagnation with damp, or with heat, or with cold. Does that make sense? Okay, so a pain that feels better with a cold compress is excess heat. A pain that feels better with a heating pad, that's excess cold. Yes? A pain that is dull, not very strong, is always a deficiency. A pain that is always strong is always an excess. Heavy pain or swollen pain is always dampness. Now, where is the pain and what does it affect? If it affects joints, ligament, tendon, sinews, it's a gallbladder, liver issue. If it affects bones, it's kidney. If it affects muscles, it's spleen and stomach. Make sense, right? And if it affects nerves, it's usually a liver problem as well, because the liver is more connected to the central nervous system. And then depending on the location of the pain, we can figure out what meridian is affected. Like kidney is always knee pain or low back pain. Liver is ankle pain and rib pain. Large intestine and small intestine are going to be elbow and shoulders. Hip pain is going to be a spleen-related problem. Jaw pain is a spleen and stomach-related problem. Jaw pain, usually people clench when they worry, overthink, and stress, and that's where the jaw pain comes up. Make sense? The neck pain is actually a long meridian issue with a bladder meridian issue, because the long 7 is the commander point of the neck and head. Right? So we look at all those pain and location and we try to figure out what is affected and we can make the proper diagnosis. Yes? Awesome. Okay, so now let's talk about food allergies and food sensitivities, which are a very distinct type of adverse reaction to certain food, right? And they involve different mechanisms in the body. So let's differentiate food allergies to food sensitivities. Food allergies are going to have an immune response, right? It involves the immune system, and the person's going to have an allergic reaction to the food, which is very harmful in a way. And we may have mild to severe hives, itching, swelling, abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, of course, difficulty in breathing, and in severe case, it can be anaphylactic reaction, which, as we know, is a life-threatening problem. right? Usually when this food allergies reaction, it typically occurs quite rapidly, often within minutes to an hour of consuming the food. When it comes to food allergies, as I said earlier, peanuts, tree nuts, shellfish, fish, eggs, milk, soy, wheat can definitely be the culprit. When you have someone that has celiac disease, they cannot have wheat at all, right? They can make them very sick. Now, food sensitivities, unlike food allergies, do not involve the immune system in the same way. It's more of an inflammation of the gut, right? So symptoms of food sensitivities are often less acute and they're usually not life-threatening. So there may be bloating, gas, maybe some diarrhea, headaches, fatigue, some skin issue for some people as well. I definitely have a wheat sensitivities in North America. So I was born in France, and in Europe, I can have all the wheat, all the croissant, the baguette, the pastries, any of it, I can have it. In North America, I cannot. I develop a sensitivity and inflammation in my body after being 2 years in Canada, and I started having bloating, gas, acne, fatigue, foggy head, all this. Once I eliminated the gluten and the wheat, no more problem. However, every time I go to Europe, not a problem at all. And I have many patients, it's exactly the same issue. So the way it's grown here, the soil, the way it's done, even organic one, it does not work for a lot of people. So this is fascinating, and it's another discussion altogether. When we have this kind of sensitivities, it can be challenging to diagnose because we need to do an elimination diet to figure out what are we sensitive to, right? Makes sense. So usually the one that people are sensitive to are wheat, strawberry, chocolate, could be nuts as well, dairy. That's very common. Soy is another one as well. And symptoms can be stomach cramp, shortness of breath, rectal bleeding can happen to vomiting, diarrhea, etc. So this for us in TCM. So I'm not talking about the one that are life-threatening, but I'm talking about food sensitivities. So food sensitivities and food allergies that are non-life-threatening are always a spleen Qi deficiency in TCM, because the spleen is in charge of transporting and transforming. When it's deficient, it cannot do its job, and then there's issue. So then the best points are stomach 36. This is the commander point of the digestive system, so it has to be there. Spleen 6, one of the best points to tonify spleen when there is any kind of spleen issue, including digestive issue. And spleen 3, because spleen 3 is the yuan source point of the spleen, which makes it the best point when there is issue with transforming and transporting function of the spleen in TCM. So those 3 points, again, 6 needles, is all we need to start with. However, if the person has a lot of gas, bloating, diarrhea, a lot of digestive issue, we can add up the digestive diamond. So the digestive diamond is stomach 25 on each side, Tutsun lateral to the belly button, and then Ren 9 above and Ren 6 below. So Ren 6 is 1.5 tsun below the belly button, and Ren 9 is just 1 tsun above the belly button. And that is the digestive diamond, and that really helps rebalance the digestive system locally as well, right? So this is a really good combo to do. At the same time, we need to eliminate the food that we have an allergic reaction or sensitivity to, and try to build the gut, heal the gut, and then slowly reintroduce it so we can see if the body can finally accept it and digest it. So the mental and emotional aspect of someone can dictate the physical aspect, and vice versa. If someone is in a car accident and they're in a lot of pain for many weeks and months, eventually settles into a depressive state or hopeless state, and the person is having a hard time coping with the pain because mentally they feel like it's not going anywhere and they're never going to heal, right? So mental and physical are completely related, and this is why acupuncture works so well, because we trigger the body physically to be able to reach the mental state of the person. Now, when it comes to Chinese medicine and mental health, we want to look at 2 things. First, we want to look at the organs that are affected by mental health. Spleen, worry, overthinking for a long-standing period of time. Liver, anger, frustration, irritability. Lung, sadness, grieving, depression. Heart, all long-standing emotions will eventually affect the heart. The heart's in charge of joy. When we lose our joy, it means that the heart is depleted, right? So anxiety affects the heart, but all other emotions do. And fear and shock affects kidney. When it comes to other things, like gallbladder is in charge of decision making. When someone feels stuck, gallbladder is being affected. When someone is feeling jealous and envious, bladder is affected. When someone cannot distinguish between right and wrong, that's small intestine. Or when someone has a hard time letting go of something, that's large intestine. When someone is really obsessed with narcissistic behavior or is really self-centered, that's a stomach issue, because the stomach is really at the center of our body, right? You can see how it's all related. I love Chinese medicine when it comes to mental health. I have a full free course on understanding the basics of mental health in Chinese medicine. I put the link below. If you haven't watched it yet, it's completely free. Go ahead and sign in and then watch it and let me know what you think. Now let's dive into the 15 most acupuncture points for mental health used in clinical practice. Spleen 5 is probably underutilized in clinical practice. However, it's one of the best points when there is mental and physical fatigue. Remember, the spleen is in charge of sending clear chi to the head for the ability to focus, concentrate, and do mental work. But it's also in charge of muscle and keeping our physical energy up. Spleen 5 is the best point when someone is very fatigued physically or mentally. I ask patients that all the time. When you say you fatigue, is it physical, is it mental, or is it both? When it's both, this is the best point. Now, if it's also physical, we want to raise chi with Ren 6, Spleen 6, Stomach 36, right? That's really important. And if it's mental only, we want to calm the mind, but raise the mental energy with Do 20 and Kidney 1 to balance the highest point and the lowest point with Spleen 5. It is such a powerful point. It's also the best point for overthinkers, and there are many of us out there, right, including myself. So when we overthink, and it takes a lot of our space and fatigue, mental fatigue for the overthinking, Spleen 5 is the best point, because remember again, the spleen is in charge of worry and overthinking. And the last one is, it is a really good point when people are anxious and they end up stuttering much more than normal. And that is a good point to add to your protocol as well. Spleen 5 rocks. Spleen 6, which is located 3 tune above the medial malleolus, is one of my favorite points. It is fantastic for many, many reasons, but one of the reasons we are talking about today is mental health. And Spleen 6 is the crossing point between the liver, the kidney, and the spleen meridian. And that makes it a powerful point to calm the mind when there's liver action, like irritability, impatience, stress, anger, frustration, but also for kidney when there is fear, and for spleen when there's worry and overthinking. This is very common. I see a lot of people in clinical practice who get a lot of anxiety, who gets worried, overthink, get irritable, get frustrated because there are a lot of stress put upon them. And that is the best point to put when there's a lot of stress affecting the mental health and creating fear, anxiety, worry, and overthinking. So you could combine Spleen 6 with Spleen 5, for example. That's a great combo as well. I love Spleen 6 because it is also a nourishing point to blood. Blood is the material basis of the mind in Chinese medicine. And without blood circulation to the brain, it is really difficult for the body and the mind to connect, and the mind feels overwhelmed. So Spleen 6, perfect point to add to your protocol. All my students know that stomach 40 is my favorite point of all time. I love this point because it does so many things, but specifically when it comes to mental health, it is the best point for phlegm in the body. Now, if you remember, phlegm, according to TCM, can be visible or invisible. Visible phlegm is obviously coughing phlegm. It's excess body fat, so like obesity. It's excess cyst. It is ganglion. It's going to be anything that is really thick, like plaque in the arteries. That is also going to be phlegm. However, invisible phlegm is what affects our brain. And that is why stomach 40 is so powerful, because it's really good for anxiety, depression, manic behavior, bipolar. This is a really good point for this because it clears invisible phlegm. Now, according to TCM, when there is depression, for example, there's always liver qi stagnation, which means the person feels stuck. And there's always phlegm because we can't rationalize, we can't get out of that mindset that feels so hopeless. So, stomach 40 is a really good point when it comes to looking at depression, specifically added up with liver 3, because liver 3 moves qi, and there's always a liver qi stagnation and some kind of phlegm. There's also other pattern. We have to always do a pattern of diagnosis. There could be blood deficiency, yin deficiency, yang rising, many other patterns. You always want to treat the pattern of diagnosis in TCM, but there are specific points that we truly want to add to the protocol, and stomach 40 and liver 3 has to be there when it comes to depression. When it comes to anxiety, it's the same idea. Stomach 40 works really well with pericardium 6. But those 2 points together are very powerful when it comes to anxiety, for sure. That makes sense, right? If you have a hard time making a TCM diagnosis, it's always good to pick the points that you think are going to be the most powerful for your patient until you can figure out the better or the best diagnosis for that patient and you get more information. Does that make sense? Love stomach 40. My favorite point. Did you know I created 3 books to support your TCM journey? Often I'm asked, Clara, what's the difference between all 3? Well, they all have fun, colorful visual to make them much more easy to grasp and understand each concept. They're definitely not your TCM typical boring dry books. They are available in hard copy and they ship all over the world. But if you'd rather the digital version, they all come with video links to complement them and can be downloaded on any device. My first book, Acupoint Made Easy, this is the orange one, covers all acupuncture points function, location, depth and angle of insertion, including special points categories, extra point cupping moxa, and all my clinical pearls. My second book, Chinese Medicine Made Easy, which is my green book, covers all TCM foundation, diagnosis, yes, including tongue and pulse, with lots of colorful visual to help you grasp specifically observation, right? Case studies, and my digital fillable intake form for you to use with your patients. My third book, Chinese Medicine Treatments Made Easy, that's my purple book, covers all TCM treatments for 160 syndromes, including acupuncture points, herbal formulas, diet, ear acupuncture, and many other TCM tools. So you can have that book at your fingertips every day in clinic. It is a must for all practitioners. I provide sample for each of my books that you can download to see if this is really truly what you were looking for, because I want you to be happy with what you're investing in when you invest in any of my products. You can check out the links to all my books in the show notes below, or go to my website, acuproacademy.com, and on the menu tab, click the shop tab and get your copy today. So first, let's go back to foundation. My favorite TCM teacher back in school used to say, if you don't understand something, go back to foundation to figure it out. The spleen function, according to TCM, is to be in charge of digestion, right? Specifically with the stomach. That's one of the things we're going to see in symptoms is loose stools or diarrhea, having issue with bloating, weak digestive system, and cravings. That is going to be linked to that function. The second function is the spleen is in charge of holding the blood within the blood vessels. So when there is issues of heavy bleeding, with abnormal heavy bleeding, like heavy menstruation bleeding, chronic nosebleed, chronic bleeding, rectal bleeding, that is accompanied with fatigue and a pale tongue and feeling exhausted, that is a spleen not holding the blood within the blood vessel, which is very different from excess heat, which can also cause abnormal heavy bleeding, but that would have a different tongue, different pulse, and a lot of heat sign, right? The next function of the spleen is to also hold everything in place, raise qi, and keep the organs in place. So when there is prolapse or organs falling, like the uterus, the bladder, the rectum, the transverse colon, that would be a spleen qi sinking, which means the spleen qi is not strong enough to hold all the organs in place. There is also the fact that spleen is in charge of raising qi, specifically clear qi, clear yang, to the head for clear thinking and not overthinking or foggy brain or worrying constantly.
which is the unhealthy, imbalanced part of the spleen. The spleen is also in charge of water metabolism, and that is in conjunction with the lung, the kidney, and the sangel. So not by itself, but is in charge of water metabolism. That's why when there's a lot of bloating, that could be leading or coming from spleen not being able to do its function. Also, when people have a puffy eyelid, because the upper eyelid is related to the spleen or corresponds to the spleen, that's also a spleen not being able to metabolize the water. Another function of the spleen is to produce blood. So producing blood, meaning for menstruation, for a good flow of blood, the spleen produces blood with nutrients, with good digestion, with good food, good nutrients. So when there is blood deficiency, we have to look at what is wrong with the spleen, what is wrong with diet, the digestive system, the absorption option. So it really leads to the digestive system again, right? That's another function when there's spleen blood deficiency, which can come up with scanty menstruation or very light menstruation or amenorrhea for that matter. That can lead to dizziness and feeling fatigue and having many symptoms with paleness, pale face, pale nails, pale lips, etc., etc. So just looking at the function of the spleen as a whole, so we know what to look for when we do treatment and for the consequences. I wanted to start by talking about the consequences of not treating spleen Qi deficiency, what it can lead to, which is worse outcome, and then we'll look at the cause. The consequences, if spleen Qi is in charge of all those functions and it is depleted, and we'll look at the cause in a minute, then the consequences can be, first of all, could be spleen blood deficiency. Now we can have spleen Qi deficiency and spleen blood deficiency, because obviously if we don't have good spleen Qi, we can't absorb nutrients, or if we don't have a good diet, we're not able to produce blood. The second one is spleen not holding the blood, like we said, within the blood vessel. So if spleen is not doing that, then obviously we have abnormal bleeding. It does stem from spleen Qi deficiency to start with. So when there is those other patterns that we see, we still have to address the spleen Qi, because it's usually at the root cause of everything, right? If there is also excess damp, excess phlegm in the body, that is also coming from the spleen Qi not being able to transform the water. Then we have this excess damp, excess phlegm. So when there is excess damp specifically, or phlegm, we want to look at the root cause coming back from the spleen Qi deficiency. It can also lead to spleen Yang deficiency, and with that, to kidney Yang deficiency. So spleen, when we have, if you go back to foundation, we have prenatal Qi and postnatal Qi. Prenatal Qi is what we were born with. It's really stored within the essence, which is the kidney function to store essence. After that, we have postnatal Qi, and postnatal Qi is going to be given to us by anything that we need in order to survive, because we were given life with prenatal Qi. Postnatal Qi is when we have anything that's going to keep us alive, which is air. So when we breathe, which goes through the lung function allows us to breathe. If we can't breathe, we can't survive. Same thing with food and water. If we don't drink or eat for many weeks and months, and for drinking probably less than that, obviously, we are going to perish, right? So that's the things that we need. Postnatal Qi is food and air. So spleen is in charge of one of those, which is the food, the nutrients, right? Absorbing nutrients, transforming it into energy, so we can have energy for the body. We can have good spleen Qi and we're not fatigued, because that's another one. When there is spleen Qi deficiency, we're very fatigued, right? Qi is yang in nature, right? So when Qi is starting to be deficient, the next stage would be Yang deficiency. Plus, spleen loves warmth. It does not like cold. So the next step is it will get cold, and it will lead to spleen Yang deficiency. If there is spleen Yang deficiency, it will affect the kidney, because the kidney is our prenatal Qi. It's what we were given. But if we're not protecting it with the other organs' function, then kidney is going to be depleted. Often when there is kidney Yang deficiency, underneath it, there is spleen Yang deficiency. Underneath that, there's spleen Qi deficiency. See how it all goes back up there? We still have to treat the root cause, which is spleen Qi deficiency. When there is spleen Qi deficiency, it can also lead to lung qi deficiency. Why is that? So we talked about air and food were the two postnatal qi. Lung qi and spleen qi have this relationship about water metabolism as well. So if you look at people with asthma, one thing they can do to improve their asthma is their diet, right? Because the digestive system, if it's able to not have too much mucus to create asthma attacks, so we have to avoid dairy and sugar and processed food. The food that we have will affect the lung. And second, in the five element, again, back to foundation, in the five element, earth generates metal. So earth is the mother of metal, which means earth is spleen and stomach. So spleen is the mother of lung, which means that spleen generates a healthy lung, which means that if we want to have a strong immune system, we need to start with food, the gut, and making sure that is strong and healing. So spleen qi deficiency affects a lot of our other patterns and a lot of our health because it's connected to our brain, our clear thinking. It's connected to our aging system through the kidney with the postnatal versus prenatal qi, and it's affecting our breathing ability. It's affecting our fatigue, our energy in general. It's affecting blood. It is such a key component to treat when there is any other issues that may stem from it. Next, let's look at the cause of liver qi stagnation. Before we look at the causes of liver qi stagnation, let's remind ourselves of the symptoms. Often the symptoms are very subtle, but they are there. So one of the main symptoms, since liver is in charge of moving qi and good flow, is shoulder tension, neck tension, maybe tight hip flexors as well, tight ankles. So our whole body is not relaxed. It's more tense. The second thing is often for women is increased symptoms prior to menstruation. So PMS or premenstruation syndrome, usually including breast tenderness, more bloating, having more mood swings, clumsy, and feeling irritable. Right? So that comes as a PMS. However, the rest of the time for everybody, other liver qi stagnation symptoms would be impatience, not having any patience. One time I asked a patient, "Are you stressed?" And she said, "No, I'm not. I'm not at all." And she got irritable with me. And I said, "Are you sure?" And she goes, "No, it's just that everyone around me is stupid." And I said, "Is everyone around you is stupid?" Like everyone. And then she looked at me and she went, "Okay, maybe I'm irritable and I'm stressed." So sometimes people are so used to be impatient or irritable easily or frustrated, they don't see it that it comes from stress. And sometimes it could be years of stress, right? The pulse will be wiry, mostly on the left side because liver is in the middle left side of the pulse, and the tongue will not change. So the tongue will stay pink, or if we have other pattern, then it will show the other pattern. Liver qi stagnation root cause is stress. Stress will start by tensing, tightening the body. And it'll show with clenching the jaw as well, because our body automatically will be tense even at night while we sleep. So stress is the number one root cause of liver qi stagnation. Another one, because we said it's about flow and freely flowing, is a lack of movement. So if someone has no exercise and they sit in front of the computer all day long and they don't move much, eventually they'll get liver qi stagnation. And because it's in charge of the flow of qi, usually we have good bowel movement, good digestive system because it's flowing. With people sitting and not moving at all, they have tendency to have bloating. At the end of the day, it's getting worse. So we have a lot of bloating that can be due to many different patterns, right? But if it's a liver qi stagnation bloating, it's the bloating that you close your pants in the morning, but by the day goes, it gets bigger bloating, and by the end of the day, you cannot feel your pants. They're so tight, you want to open them. So the bloating increases with the day, and that's a liver qi stagnation. And usually the next morning, the bloating is right back down. So when it comes to liver qi stagnation, root cause, stress, and lack of movements are the two main causes. Consequences of not addressing liver qi stagnation is going to lead to more issue, and that's why it's important to address it. What are the consequences of liver qi stagnation if it's not addressed? The most common one is liver yang rising. Liver yang rising is that next stage where we have liver qi stagnation, we are tense, we are stressed, but now we get more symptoms. The more stress is put upon us, the more symptoms we get. We start getting temporal headaches at the end of the day. We start having maybe red eyes. We wake up in the night between 1 and 3 a.m. However, we are able to fall back asleep. The tongue might have a bit of red sides because the yang rises, so heat rises. We feel warmer, more irritable, more angry. We're short fused much more than with liver qi stagnation. It's like a volcano exploding and then coming back down. That's a liver yang rising. The next level after that, which is worse, is liver fire. So now we're constantly upset, constantly mad. We now have hot temporal headache every day, and when you put a cold compress, it feels better. Because there is fire rises, we may get high blood pressure, constant red bloodshot eyes. Now, if we wake up at night between 1 and 3, we will not be able to fall back asleep. We are going to stay up and we are going to be quite warm most of the night. Also, because there's fire, it dries fluids, so there may be constipation, bitter taste in the mouth. The tongue now is going to be red, and it may have a really dry yellow coat on it. The pulse will be wiry, rapid. With liver yang rising, usually the pulse is wiry. It can go rapid and come back down, but with liver fire, it's constantly wiry, rapid. The third one that can occur is liver blood stasis. So liver blood stagnation or liver blood stasis is a consequence of liver qi stagnation because liver moves qi, but qi moves blood. Blood is material. It cannot move unless there's energy. There's qi to move it, right? So if we have liver qi stagnation that is there for a long time, eventually it may lead to blood stagnation, which is a worse condition in TCM perspective because now there's going to be pain, fixed pain. That could be dysmenorrhea, could be clots in the blood with really bad cramping. Instead of shoulder tension, you have that shoulder knot back there that's so painful, you just want to take it out. It's so stabbing pain. Or you have stabbing headache, like just so strong, and it's pounding and pounding, right? The tongue would be purple, and the pulse would be wiry, choppy.
Now, the last one, and please write this down because this is a gold mine tip. Always give a courtesy call to every new patient within 48 hours of their first visit. Not a text, not an email, a courtesy call. If it's a voicemail, because often you're going to get the voicemail, I'll say, hey, it's Clara, your acupuncturist. We just saw each other 2 days ago. I just wanted to check on you, see how you were doing after treatment. And if you have any questions, because I know we talked about a lot of things, feel free to call me, email me, and let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you next Tuesday at 6 p.m. That way, you remind them of their appointment. You're asking them how they felt after treatment. And often people feel really good after treatment, but a week later, they might have forgotten that they felt so good. So it reminds them that, oh, this is working. I slept really well that night. And you also letting them know that if they have questions, they don't have to be shy. They can ask you, they can reach you. It doesn't mean because they're not there anymore that you are not available. Of course, we're available to answer questions, right? So this is really good. And often over the years, people have said, thank you for your call. I was so really delighted that you actually took the time to call me. So always give a courtesy call to every new patient, only for new patients, within 48 hours of the first visit. You'll see a tremendous connection with your patient after that, and they will refer you to everybody. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I truly hope you benefited from this episode, and I would love for you to share it with a friend that may benefit from it as well. Follow the show, leave a review, and if you want more, go to my website, acuproacademy.com. I have tons of resources there with treatment protocols, case studies, free courses, and so much more. And connect with me on all social media at AcuPro Academy. I'm on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, X, Pinterest, and LinkedIn and TikTok. And no matter what, keep rocking it using TCM. Please listen to the disclaimer because the AcuPro Show podcast and material shared through AcuPro Academy, which is a subdivision of Natural Health Sense Incorporated, are designed solely for educational and entertainment purposes. The utilization of information from this podcast or any associated material is at the user's discretion
and risk. This content is not meant to replace the guidance of an acupuncturist, Chinese medicine doctor, medical doctor, physician, or any qualified professional, nor is it a substitute for proper diagnosis or treatment. Users are strongly advised not to ignore or postpone seeking medical advice for any existing medical condition with their healthcare professional regarding any health concerns.